All right, good afternoon. Apologies for the longer than usual delay. At the start of this morning's Security Council meeting, the Secretary General said that he was deeply saddened by the terrible suffering of the civilian population in eastern Ghouta in Syria, where 400,000 people live in hell on earth. He appealed to all those involved for an immediate suspension of all war activities in eastern Ghouta. He also noted the need for medical evacuation of some 700 people, as well as the need to provide humanitarian assistance to the people in the region. Secretary General also warned that this is a human tragedy unfolding before our eyes. In a statement we issued last night, the Secretary General also noted that eastern Ghouta is part of a de-escalation agreement reached in Astana, and he reminded all parties, particularly the guarantors of the Astana agreement, of their commitments in this regard. The Secretary General urges all stakeholders to ensure that basic principles of international humanitarian law are followed, including unhindered humanitarian access, unconditional medical evacuation, and the protection of civilians and civilian infrastructure. And as you will have seen in the meeting, the current and previous Secretaries General both spoke at the Council meeting on the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter. The Secretary General told the Security Council that the Charter's principle, non-use of force, peaceful settlement of disputes, non-intervention and cooperation, self-determination, and the sovereign equality of member states remain the foundation of international relations. The values it proclaims, equal rights, non-discrimination, tolerance, and good neighborliness, remain guideposts for global harmony. However, he added, the challenges we face have evolved, the drivers of conflict have become more complex, new threats have emerged, and the consequences of instability now flow far beyond their source. The former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon also spoke and said that the primary responsibilities vested in the Security Council to maintain international peace and security are needed now more than ever. And we've put out the remarks of both the 9th and 8th Secretaries General. Turning to the Central African Republic, Ursula Mueller, the Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, is in Central African Republic, where she met today with President Faustin Archange Touadéra. She underlined the deteriorating humanitarian situation and the need to help step up efforts aimed at protecting people. She also reiterated her commitment to continue to advocate far more funding for humanitarian activities in the country. The CAR's 2018 humanitarian response plan requires some $516 million to meet the needs of 1.9 million people. Since 20 persons living with host communities have depleted the limited resources that were available in the town. Ms. Mueller called on the international community to support the humanitarian response plan for Pawa, and she stressed that while people need to go back to their villages of origin to restart their livelihoods, protection remains the main priority for the population. And just a trip to announce, the Undersecretary General for Peacekeeping Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, will be heading to Brussels in Belgium from the 22nd to the 23rd of February to participate in a high-level conference on the G5 Sahel. He will also be attending a side event on the G5's compliance with human rights and will hold meetings with senior government officials on the sideline of the conference. And I want to flag a new report on newborn mortality issued by UNICEF. Global deaths of newborn babies remain alarmingly high, particularly among the world's poorest country, the report says. Babies born in Japan, Iceland, Singapore have the best chance of survival, while those in Pakistan, the Central African Republic, and Afghanistan face the worst odds. If every country brought its newborn mortality rate down to the high-income average by 2030, 16 million lives could be saved. And in Rome, an international conference on halting deforestation is taking place until tomorrow. The Food and Agriculture Organization stressed that in view of the challenges to meet the demands of a growing and more urbanized population, changing the way we manage land, food production, and forests is key to guaranteeing food security. The International Conference on Working Across Sectors to Halt Deforestation and Increased Forest Areas from Aspiration to Action is the first major technical conference on forests since the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the first ever UN Strategic Plan for Forests. And a clarification during yesterday's briefing in response to a question about the immunity of UN Population Fund staff in India, I stated the general UN principle about immunity of its staff around the world. However, in the particular case in India, I'd like to clarify that UNFPA India has already responded to the Ministry of External Affairs and that immunity of UN staff can be waived only by the UN Secretary General. UNFPA has also informed the ministry that although the claimant has never been employed by UNFPA, she is welcome to make her claim of misconduct to UNFPA's Office of Audit Investigation, which will investigate the matter. The facilities for filing a claim with the office are publicly available on UNFPA's website. I will get to you. Today is Mother Language Day. The theme this year is Linguistic Diversity and Multilingualism Count for Sustainable Development. The theme stresses that local languages, especially minority and indigenous, transmit cultures, values, and traditional knowledge, and thus play a key role in promoting sustainable future. A few facts for you. 43% of the estimated 6,000 languages spoken around the world are endangered. Every 2 weeks, one of the world's languages disappears. And today at 5 p.m. in Conference Room 4, there'll be an event to mark the day, organized by the Permanent Mission of Bangladesh. And lots of thanks today to our friends in Bhutan, Micronesia, Montenegro, and Romania, who have paid their regular budget dues in full, and we are most grateful. I don't even have the number, so I'll have to take your word for it.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thanks a lot. Because yesterday I'd received, after you'd said that they hadn't cited immunity, UNFPA wrote back to the Ministry, the Foreign Affairs Ministry of India, and said they're not waiving it. The Secretary General has not waived it. So I just want to be, one, it's unfortunate because the complainant here has actually now filed criminal charges in India based on what you'd said about no immunity. But why is the Secretary General, given his statements about the importance of this issue?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to go into the details of the case. What is important, and I think to remember, this case does not involve allegations of sexual abuse, sexual harassment. It is for a different, it's a different issue. So it does not involve the issues that we discussed yesterday.
Well, and that's not what the complainant says.
Well, but I'm saying that's
Mr.
okay. So I will leave it at that.
I also wanted to ask you about Justin Forsyth. It's emerged that the then head of Save the Children left that organization under the cloud of what he admitted to be inappropriate text messages, et cetera. Somehow he then became the deputy executive director of UNICEF. And so what I'm wondering is, I've seen some accounts that UNICEF is now belatedly looking into it. What review did UNICEF do in hiring Mr. Forsyth at the time, and what now does Antonio Guterres, at the head of the system, intend to do about this public?
Obviously, I think as UNICEF said very clearly, they were not aware of any of the complaints against Justin Forsyth at the time of his recruitment, and they're continuing to work with him currently and his previous employer, Save the Children, to get a better understanding of the facts. And I would also like to make clear for my colleagues at UNICEF, there have been no such complaints concerning Mr. Forsyth at UNICEF.
Given the centrality of the UN in the sort of aid world, does the UN believe that Save the Children should have said what the reason for leaving was, so that people don't just keep getting kicked down the line as appears to have happened in
again, I think as a man, I'm not talking about this specific case because I don't have the. I just want to state as a matter of principle. Obviously, if people have been accused or have been reported having committed these types of actions, it needs to be known. I can't speak for Save the Children about what they knew at the time when Mr. Forsyth was recruited. That's a question. That's a question for them. Tanzania, go ahead.
You had said yesterday that you were unaware of this killing of the university student and the subsequent calling in of opposition parties and sort of blaming them for what and I guess I just wanted to know, there are many groups in Tanzania that are saying things are getting increasingly repressive. What is the UN's position on this?
I don't have any language on Tanzania at this point. Okay, Mr. Varma, it's you.